This conference will now be recorded.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, have you started the recording? I have. Thank you. Okay. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fox,
Present.
Councilmember Casberg,
Here.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
Councilmember Strobin,
Present.
No, that was Robin.
Oh. I was like, what?
Councilmember
Turn my
Cerveny.
hearing aid up.
Councilmember Cerveny,
I am here.
and Mayor Thornton.
Present, thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen public comment. If there's anybody that would like to address the city council, oh, excuse me, I got to go through a list. We got 3 different categories here now. So there's 3 ways that you can comment at city council meetings to the city council. The first one would be for the audience to comment. So if there's anyone here this evening that would like to address the city council for any items that are not on the agenda, if you could please come forward to the podium, give us your name and address, and if you'd limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, and clerk, if you have some cards. If you'd
I have a
like
card
those.
for Al.
Alphilla, 152 West 15th Street. Hey, the cornhole tournament, outstanding. I'd never been to one. It was great. They had a lot of people there. Kids were enjoying themselves. They had a local vendor who made the sandwiches. I bought one and ate it. I spent $25 for a t-shirt, so you know what, I wasn't that happy. So, those are the things that we need for the park out there. So if anybody has any ideas, let's go for it. But again, that was a great thing. Okay, now for what? Okay. The county, in all their wisdom, in North Clark County, they moved a lot of their speed limits from 50 to 40, which some people think is great, some people don't, no problem. But out here to the junction, we're going to change that at some time. We might as well do it now because, we've got it's 35 and then 50, whatever you make your mind up, you might as well do it now so that the public works only has to change it one time. Just do it once, get it over with, because believe me, those guys, at least they fooled me, are real, real busy all the time. And so we don't want them doing things over and over. God bless America.
Thank you.
Ken,
You got it in here.
Hello, my name is Ken Mauer. I'm with the Vista View Homeowners Association, and my discussion here has been changed, but I had dust. We had a tremendous amount of dust earlier this month. There was no water. Inconsiderate timing for the operators. They were starting 6 in the morning, work till 7 at night. Safety was another concern. One of the things that I thought that the city should have notified the public works where the dust was vandalism level. Since then, I've had a chance to meet with Tapani, their contractor, and they've solved all the issues that I had concerns with, and it's much better now. And I think there's going to be no problem. But in the meantime, it should have been addressed before our homeowner association finally got it to us. So anyway, I think we got it all taken care of, but it was past normal. It was a vandalism type of dust problem. Thank you.
What neighborhood was that?
I'm at Vista View, and the new project is the Stevens Hillside Farm Project. It's off 18.
Okay, thank you.
And they're moving quite a bit of dirt, and that's one of the issues. Uh, I thought 30,000 yards, but it turned out it's more like 150,000 yards. And they're going to haul in another 50,000 yards. So it turned into be a big project, and the water was slow getting there, but the equipment was there. And I think they've got it solved. I'm pretty convinced they are. I met with the project manager, and it was on top of it. So I think the problem's been solved. So my issues with the city is they should have been involved with that right from the start, because we could see it from a mile away. When it come off the freeway, you could see it billowing, and it was way past acceptable levels. So thank you.
Thank you.
Laura.
Good evening. My name is Laura Lanka, and I live at 1810 East Bartlett Court. My husband Peter and I have lived here in this town for over 11 years, really next to kind and generous neighbors, and we love the quality of life that we have here. Tonight, I do feel privileged to speak in front of you members of the City Council, and I hope my constructive comments reinforce the excellent work of the Vista View Ridge Association homeowners, President Ken Maurer, who just spoke, and our Secretary Susie Terrell. They are providing they are helping to reverse the substantial damage to our property values that has occurred over the summer months and restore our quality of life, most notably to those living directly across the street from the Stevens Hillside Farm Home Construction Project on Bartlett Court. Specifically, I am awed by Ken's particularly ability communication with the appropriate project managers. And trust me, we tried a lot of people here to help us. And that now those managers seem willing to provide some actions to remedy the situation. Their anticipated actions should have a very positive impact on our current highly visible air pollution and conversation deadening noise, as well as providing home restoration from huge dirt and dust damage created by Tepani's infrastructure installation. But here's what remains a concern. While intermittent speeding up and down Aspen Avenue has, especially during the late evening and early morning hours, has always been a persistent problem, the recent construction has amplified the loss of safety and peace and quiet. Sometimes the workers are starting at 6 in the morning. It's vital that the law enforcement halt, and I'll be so bold as to say immediately, the speeding largely associated with the construction project. And in that same vein, when new tradition homes, when that building begins, it is essential for La Center's safety and well-being that any and all traffic be as controlled as it appears to be for all of us when we drive across the Lewis River Bridge at 25 miles an hour, and everybody drives slowly into La Center. Having to wait for the implementation of necessary driver and pedestrian safety is wrong. I hope you too see that safety, especially in our
Excuse me,
neighborhood.
ma'am, your 3 minutes are up. If you could please wrap it up, that'd be great.
Especially in a neighborhood full of children, it must be immediate. Thank you again, and I appreciate you hearing me.
Thank you very much.
Susie.
Susie Terrell, 628 East 18th Street. Mayor, councilors, it's been a while since I've been up here in front of you guys. And I got a lot to say. No, I'm just kidding. First off, I want to thank Brian for all of your help in addressing the piles of garbage next to the museum. Their dumpster at those apartments is like right there by our driveway, and it was always overflowing. And the birds, the crows, everybody, the squirrels, whoever would get in there, and the museum had a lot of trash all the time, but it really got bad lately. And Brian, I think, talked to the owners and sent them a warning letter, so thank you very much for that. I drove by tonight, and it's nice and clean. I also wanted to thank Alex, because I've heard that he's going to be adding the museum open house schedule to the city calendar, which I didn't realize we weren't on there until the other day. And I know she's not here, but I wanted to thank Desi, because Desi has been great. She came to the museum for a tour. She took pictures. She blew up the pictures and did this wonderful photo wall over here of all the old time pictures. And she did a lot of work, and she was just great. And the article, I'm not sure if she wrote it. It was fantastic. It was really nice. And so thanks for the kudos there. And it's just really been nice that she's helping to promote the museum. So I too was going to bring up the hillside speeders because we walk twice a day in that area, and we cross Aspen a lot. And you know, there's people that are coming out of the trail there in the woods by the trees, and you know, there's dogs, there's kids, and they don't always look really close. And then the people coming down that hill are just ripping, and then here comes all the big heavy equipment. And once they hit the dirt, they really full throttle it. I mean, the dust was just going. They were like going, you know, 100 miles an hour out there. So anyway, others that are addressing this too. So I'll give my time over to them. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other cards?
I have no other cards.
Is there anyone in the audience that did not fill out a card that would still like to speak to the council this evening? Okay, thank you. So if there are any callers that are calling in this evening that would like to make a public comment, now would be the opportunity to do that. Please press *6 on your telephone if you want to make a comment. Do we have any comments? Okay. There's no one calling in this evening. So the third option people have is to submit their comments to be read at the city council meeting. Clerk, do we have any comments that need to be read?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there are no items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council. We do have one presentation this evening on the agenda. It will be from the La Center, from La Center United. And we have two presenters here this evening, Kaylin Flatt and Karen Stewart. So if you please come up and give us your presentation. Thank you for being here.
We are members of the board of the Center United, and we are here to inform you about our organization. My name is Karen Stewart. I am a resident of 12 years, a local teacher and mom.
I am Kaylin Flatt, and I have been part of Listen United for 9 years, I believe it is, and I'm currently the community representative on the executive board.
Excuse me, the audience is having a hard time hearing you. If you can hold the mic, or just if you could please stand a little bit closer to it. There you go. That'll work.
I'll use my teacher voice. We want to just inform you of what La Center United is, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you have an idea of what we are and what our organization does. What is La Center United, you might ask? You maybe if you've heard about us, but we are a community coalition, first and foremost. We're made up of individuals, we are made up of businesses, agencies who share a vision for our community of a healthy and resilient community for all. We believe in the power of positive community change when we all work together. Our mission, and this is our mission statement formally, is to inspire our community to be safe, healthy, and resilient, preventing destructive behavior through open access to education and environmental strategies, supporting those in need, sharing ideas, and offering help where we can. Our vision is a healthy and resilient community for all youth and families. We have 3 umbrellas that we fall under, the first being the Drug-Free Communities Grant, the DFC, and that is our primary funding, and it provides a certain number of years where we get funding from the government to fund education support and build our organization to prevent youth substance abuse primarily. We also are just kicking back off the Loft, and the Loft is a teen center. Our kids need places to go and make good choices. And we are in a donated space by the church, but we are not run through the church. And we also have a 501(c)(3). And so those help support the other 2, but we can raise money and also support other organizations like the Community Backpack Program and National Night Out and things like that for our community organizations.
Okay, so what is the history of Listen United? In 2013, there was a group of parents that came together after realizing that there was some issues with mental health of youth in our community, and we wanted to help solve those problems and make it a better community for everyone, basically. So the coalition committed itself to gathering members of all parts of the community or all sectors of the community, responding to the challenges that we're facing with mental health and substance use. So what is a community coalition? There's kind of 2 different definitions here. One is the DFC or Drug-Free Community Grant definition, and that's a community-based formal arrangement where each sector comes together and collaborates its ideas, and each group retains its identity but works together, and that was their definition of a coalition. And then a community coalition, sort of for what we think is, it's a coalition that establishes relationships within its community and ideas and outcomes can be achieved together through that. Now, there's a lot of different things that our community thinks that we do. So we've asked actually multiple people, and these are some of the answers we get. Some are true and some are false. So that's part of the reason we're doing this presentation, is to clear up about what we actually are and what we aren't. And you might be wondering, what is a sector or a sector representative? A sector is a subgroup within a community, and our DFC grant requires that we have 12 of these different sectors represented at our table at all times to continue having that grant. And the sector representatives are the individuals that are part of those sectors. Some of these include youth, parents, law enforcement, and different areas, and each of these are what come together to create our coalition for who we are.
And we started this program and are continually funded right now by the Drug-Free Communities Grant, and that is a national level grant. It supports our nation's efforts to mobilize communities to prevent and reduce substance abuse among youth, which is a concern for all of us. It was created in 1997 by the Drug-Free Communities Act, administered by the White House Office of Drug Control and Policy, and don't ask me to read the little abbreviations together, and managed through a partnership between the 2 agencies. The DFC program grants provide community coalitions to strengthen our infrastructure and our community-based partnerships to create and sustain a reduction in drug abuse of local substance abuse programs. We were awarded that and it's $125,000 a year for 5 years, and we were funded in 2020. for our 6 to 10 years of funding. So we have a good start and we have lots of places to go. There's a video that shows the kind of what we do, and they're both the same one.
Prevention efforts focusing on the environment aim to build communities that protect adolescents from early substance use. All of the key sectors within a community come together to build coalitions and comprehensive strategies that reduce risk factors for substance misuse and addiction, such as high rates of poverty, social norms, and drug availability, and counterbalances them with protective factors such as community engagement and healthy activities. Coalitions bring partnerships to communities, and each sector supports prevention efforts. These strategies vary based on the unique needs of a particular community and can include changing social norms around substance use through awareness campaigns, educating people of all ages about the disease of addiction, and teaching adults how to recognize the signs of substance use and intervene if a young person is struggling. Prevention efforts also include policies that decrease drug availability, like imposing taxes on alcohol and tobacco, and passing laws to regulate prescribing practices, and increasing access to evidence-based treatments. Prevention efforts improve the places where young people spend their time, like schools, public parks, libraries, churches, shopping malls, to promote attachment and community engagement, which reduces the likelihood of substance use. Researchers have found that implementing proven prevention policies would save the U.S. billions of dollars annually. More important, prevention saves lives. Community coalitions improve overall community health and increase the likelihood that young people will live lives free of addiction. Together, we can solve this. Join us.
Some of the programs and initiatives that we have done through the DFC grant include the following, and we are involved in the Drug Take Back event, which helps people get rid of prescription medication. 3 of us were able to go in July to the CADCA training in Florida, and it was an incredible 5 days of lots of information on how to apply it, and we heard a lot from youth of what worked in their communities. And to me, that was the most powerful and really inspired me that we need to really be putting our efforts into getting these kids to tell us what they need. Lock Saves Lives, which is a prevention program bringing the Healthy Youth Survey to our youth. We did Mind Up trainings. We just recently were involved in the backpack drive, which we had 120 children we were able to provide school supplies for with various organizations that helped. Chalk the Walks was recently, which was an art program. Teens Care 2, parent training in the Parenting Project, which allows parents to get information about the challenges that our kids face today. And we're really working to get our youth advisory team up and running with the Loft. Also, we have monthly coalition meetings where we provide sponsored speakers on a variety of topics and even teacher training in areas of ACEs, which are adverse childhood reactions, mindfulness training, alcohol use awareness training, and mental health first aid, which has been big for our community, and even vaping and all the things that change on a regular basis. And we help organize and distribute welcome baskets for our new residents. And as our community is continually growing, this is going to be an even bigger thing. And we provide volunteers and tabling events. We've been at our days this summer. We were at the Easter egg hunt, tree lighting, the principal's breakfast, the holiday bazaar. We've been at the farmer's market, national night out. We got to do that. That was lots of fun. So we are at a lot of places in this community.
The Loft is one of our projects at the moment, and it started in 2018 and only was shut down for 2 years because of COVID, but it's back up and running for this new school year. It's a safe place for our youth to come after school. If you know, our community doesn't have many places for youth to go together and have a safe place, which can lead to unfortunate experiences. And it's completely run by volunteers, and the space is donated by the church, but we're not affiliated with the church. And prior to COVID, the loft was open on Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5:30, and it was for middle school and high school students, and I believe that's going to be the same for this year. So the center is a nonprofit organization, and there are some things that we want to buy that we can't do with the DFC grant, such as snacks for kids in the loft or games and things like that. And so that's where we need funding for that falls outside of that area of funding. And if you're wanting to get involved, there's many ways to do that. Our coalition meetings, we have those monthly, and there's a calendar available for them online. You can get on you can get on our volunteer list, and we will send out things if we need volunteers for them. And you can volunteer anywhere from once a week to like once a year if you wanted. Or you can donate money. Our donations help fill those gaps like I was talking about before, and they support our youth and our community needs. We have many of community partners, some within La Center and some outside of La Center, some other coalitions, as you can see here. This is just some of them, I believe. And then here are some pictures showing what we as a community coalition do. There are pictures up here from Chalk the Walks. We've been at graduations, and the picture in the center is when we went to the CADCA training. We sent some youth to the CADCA training in Washington, D.C., and that was a really great event for them.
Are there any questions that you have for us?
Council, any questions?
I have a question. Kind of like the DARE program back in the day, are you guys able to go into the classroom specifically? Is there people that have the time to like go in and talk to younger elementary to really educate them? Is that, yeah.
Let our director talk.
Great.
Hi, I'm Melissa Flatt. So we don't go into the classroom, but several years ago we did arrange with the high school to have intervention prevention specialists.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer in the schools at this time, but I'm hoping we can get them back.
Yeah.
But ourselves, we don't.
Sure. Yeah.
But we provide information to teachers. So some of the health teachers have taken a little bit of, gone through some of the trainings and have taken some of that information back around prevention.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Hi, I'm Chris Susky, and I've been on the board since we started. And they have let us come in sometimes at lunchtime and do presentations on that,
Great.
especially if we give away stuff.
Do you guys talk about specifics with high schoolers, like fentanyl and like the difference that they look like? I mean, I would love to make a huge poster and just put it in there, like, this is what fentanyl looks like, this is what whatever is, you know, or something. Like, it sounds really crazy, but like,
we would
that's
love
the biggest
to
thing
do
on
that.
my heart because it's something that we don't talk about.
We would love to get a presentation going, and Liz suggested somebody. We have a new principal that we're all going, okay, let's see what we can get going at that point. And I absolutely think you're right that, you know, we think, oh no, we don't have that. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, and we're not talking about 20-year-olds. Sometimes we're talking about fifth graders, which is really surprising.
Yeah.
You know,
breaks
so
my heart.
it is here. We don't like to see it. You know, a lot of us don't know it, but yeah, there is stuff like that that we need to start early and often and teach resilience. That's one of the things that we do with the Mind Up program is teach resilience. So when the kids have a problem, that they can know to sit back, to take a breath, and the teacher knows that that's okay. So we teach the teachers and we teach the kids. So I could go on forever, but I won't.
Yeah, no, wonderful. I love it. Yeah.
And one of the big projects we're hoping to get up and running this year, we actually sent Desi to the same training. It's called the Montana Institute, and it's positive community norms. So when we look at the Healthy Youth Survey, most of our students are not using, which is amazing, right? But when you talk to some students, they're like, everybody's using.
Right.
So with the positive community norms, the sign would say, most students don't use, right? So that they understand. And then list where it is. We could list percentages and that sort of thing. When I was at the CADCA training this year, I went to several breakout sessions on fentanyl and prescriptions. And the biggest issue with fentanyl is if I were to make it at home and I took whatever they take, you could take 5 pills, right? And then they'll give you the test strips and you could crush one. That one pill could show almost no fentanyl. The one right next to it can be an overdose for you. Because the way that the chemicals
Are distributed.
yeah, they distribute themselves, and they call it the chocolate chip effect. So if you make chocolate chip cookies, I always go for the one with lots of chocolate chips, right? And you
I
just
see.
scoop it out.
I see.
And so that's what they were referring.
Okay. Thank you for
And that's
explaining
why,
that to me.
yeah, that's why the fentanyl is so
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
So even if they were to test one pill, and they tell them to test 3, well, if they have 5 pills, I don't think they're going to test 3.
Sure.
You know, they might do 1. So,
Right.
And then
Right.
Narcan, of course, is, you know, another suggestion. So
Right. Right.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a big topic, but yeah, I was just curious, like mostly like how much interaction do you get with students? You know, do you get to go and, you know, really talk about the dirty stuff, you know, the hard stuff, you know, I mean, there's the fun stuff of the backpacks and stuff, but like, where do we get that time to really, because I remember DARE being like really raw kind of to us in middle
Right.
school. And it was like, whoa, we're having this talk in classroom. It was like, yeah, this is what we're talking about.
So some of the places we take the youth, which we haven't because of COVID, but with our youth advocacy
Sure.
team that we'd like to rebuild. So like Kaylin was one of them. She went to DC. She's gone to, it's in Yakima. It's called the Washington Youth Prevention Summit. And they sit down with this. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you learned there? No?
It was quite a few years ago, but I think I remember enough. So they sit you down and they talk about many different things from prevention to mental health, and they really tell you the details. And they also give you information about how to bring that information back to your community, which I really like. Yeah, I don't know, but I've also been to other things like Teens Care 2, which a lot of students went to that, and that was cool because they also did quite the same amount of things and information.
Cool. Awesome. I just had one more question. Also, like before COVID, I know, how many kids were coming to the loft at a time? Like, what was your numbers at? I'm super curious.
We started out with kids coming 2 at a time, and then
Uh-huh.
it gradually built, and just before it hit, we had 30 kids
Oh, wonderful.
coming, which is huge.
Awesome.
And then
Awesome.
all of a sudden, we started it again, and now we get 1 and 2 at a time. But, you know,
6 at one
we had 6 one time. But the important thing to me is
Yeah.
that we are there.
Yeah.
They know we're there for the
Yeah.
kids that aren't in sports, that don't know where to go.
Right.
And if I have to sit there by myself with a book, I'm willing to do that as long as they know we are there and available.
Great. Awesome. Well, Gold Star Tutoring would like to donate $500 and for whatever you guys need. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
That's huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's a perfect.
If anybody else in the mood for giving, but yeah,
So with the
Especially-
DFC grant, they give us $125,000 a year. We're required to match that. In the beginning, I believe we matched 50%. We're now up to where we have to match 125%. So what that means is any of the time, all the volunteers, we log their hours and we do that. Donations go straight into that. The church and Lions both donated to
Nice.
the backpack program, so we
Uh-huh.
use that. So anytime, any donations are greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I bet. Well, what you guys are doing is awesome, and
And we're just
appreciate
entering.
it. Yeah,
Thank you. We're just
Yes.
entering year 8, so we have
Okay.
2 more under the DFC.
great, awesome, great. Thank you for your presentation. Anybody else? Sorry, I don't mean to take up. I just love the kids.
Thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it. Oh, well, you know, I'm done. It's startup days right now, so the teacher's tired. We are reopening the loft. Something exciting that we didn't mention before is the church has been raising money through farmers market and their garage sale funds to help support the loft and also to hire somebody to help us, because it is hard to get. You need a couple of adults there at a time, and it's hard to always get the volunteers.
Yeah.
I teach outside of town, so I can't get there right at the exact time. So we are going to have somebody hired. He is starting the 21st. And so we're really excited. The loft is going to get kicked off, and we're going to be advertising that to the youth of the community. We do have our first meeting of the year for this school year, and it's an orientation similar to this. We're going to offer it at 2 different times on September 27th. One is right after school in the elementary school library, and the other will be 6:30 at Holly Park. So it gives people multiple times to come and see, and hopefully we'll get plenty of parents and people interested in our programs.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would like to thank all of you for the investment that you've given to the youth and the community for the many, many years and the hard work that you put in. You know, all of the behind the scenes work, you know, many people don't see, but the investment that you've made in the youth is tremendous. And we truly appreciate it, and we see the value So please keep up the good work and let us know how we can help.
Thank you for that, Liz. Yeah, it's a great presentation. Thank you for coming this evening. Well done. So next on the agenda is the mayor's report. I do have a couple items to share with the council this evening. First, there will be a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Riverside Park this Saturday, August 27th, and it will begin at 2 p.m. And everyone is invited. And if you're not familiar with what that park is, it's kind of on the north end of town, up right on Pacific Highway. So it's that will be happening this weekend. And then another notice here is that the city offices will be closed Monday, September 5th in observance of Labor Day. I do have one other item I want to share with the council. It's just an update on the city's negotiations with the city of Ridgefield for shared police services. I just want to tell the council that last week I spoke with the Ridgefield city manager, Steve Stewart, regarding Ridgefield's status to analyze the potential for shared policing services between Ridgefield and the city of the center. Steve commented that the Ridgefield City Council has been supportive of the steps which have been completed to date. And those steps include that the Ridgefield and La Center staff have met multiple times and exchanged information regarding budget, staffing, operations, and a recap of previous analysis. So the city has met with the city of La Center has met with the city of Ridgefield several times regarding this issue. Also, the Ridgefield city staff has compiled a grid with all the information that they've received for all the financial, operational, risk liability, and community issues which need to be considered in a potential agreement, which they're going through that process right now. The next step for the Ridgefield city staff is to brief the city council on the information which has been gathered, discuss the grid which has been compiled, and seek to determine whether council wishes to get help putting together a joint policing policy strategy, both for both councils, for the city of the center as well as Ridgefield. Steve's hope is that Ridgefield Council is interested in proceeding with this strategy and plan. Steve will be having this conversation with his council members over the next couple of weeks, and then he will quickly reach out to me again as to let me know what the status of that is. So that's where we are right now with the city of Ridgefield, and I know that they're diligently working on it, but as I've mentioned before, and it's a slow process, a lot of moving parts, and we are going to continue to have those conversations. I just also want to say that Steve noted that he truly appreciates all the time the center staff has put into this to help him and his staff better understand the needs and possibilities of working together for the enhanced safety of both cities. So that's where we are with the city of Ridgefield as of right now. Do you have any questions, Council?
Is it looking hopeful?
Well, it sounded encouraging to
Or
me,
just all
but
neutral?
there's still a lot of moving parts, but they are moving forward with it. So hopefully you'll know something here real soon, more affirmative.
I guess this is maybe more to logistics, but I had asked a couple weeks ago to have that formally added to the agenda, just so we could have more of a public open conversation about what's going on. I mean, that all does sound encouraging, and I'm, pleased to hear that, but I think we need to be able to talk about it a little bit more in whatever that regard, or however that may look, but just more of a public conversation, because I think that's all good, but I'd just like it to be discussed between all of us.
Well, I thought what you asked for was for me to brief the council on these updates, but if you're asking for more than that, people can comment during the public comment process as well. But I'm not exactly sure what it is that you're asking for.
Just to be able to have it added to an agenda item so that we can, if there's any questions regarding the different whatever you've discussed with the city of Ridgefield, that we can all be included on that, I guess.
Okay, well, going forward, we will have, staff updates and, I guess when we get to that point where we can actually have an agenda item, we'll definitely get that included. But yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think maybe just to clarify for Sean anyway, it sounds to me like they've made a request for the information regarding the staffing numbers and the budget concerns that they may have. And then it sounded like they would provide a list of questions and discussion topics that would come back to this council. Is that correct?
I think right now where the city of Ridgefield is at with it, that the work at the staff level has been completed.
Yeah.
So now the city manager wants to meet with the council members to get their support for pursuing it. And the city manager, Steve Stewart, would also like to get he's looking potentially for having a third-party consultant, if you will, to work with the city of Ridgefield and then ultimately the city of La Center, so that we're sure to have that public process that I think Sean is asking for. But that will be part of the ongoing discussions once Ridgefield City Council gives them their city staff to go ahead to pursue this.
Okay.
And his hope would be that simultaneously, the La Center City Council would be supportive of the process to go forward so that we're in lockstep and sync with each other. So there's no surprises as we go along this process. So right now they're just, again, looking to pull that all together with their city council, and they'll be coming back to the city of La Center for the same concurrence from our council so we can move forward in a unified manner. Does that answer your question or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Just one more comment. I mean, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I just feel like as like a representative of the community, I think with this, what we're trying to accomplish with this, it'd be nice if we had somebody either from council or, a part of somebody else from the community, whether who be it or albeit, however you want to say it, a part of these discussions and conversations. I do, appreciate what's been happening, what's going on, but we need to have some more involvement, I guess, in my opinion.
And that involvement's going to be coming forward. Again, I think once this Ridgefield city staff is comfortable with pursuing it with their council, and their council concurs that that's what they want to go forward with. And again, it's going to be imperative that the La Center City Council also wants to move forward. That's when we'll start having those interactions.
I guess I just want to feel prepared when that comes towards us. So
You will be.
if we have anything that we need to discuss prior to that, we can do that.
Okay, you will be prepared. We will have the information needed to go forward with the discussion. We just need to get to that point to where we can actually do that. Does that make sense or?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we can't get ahead of the Ridgefield's process. We have to be considerate of what they're doing. And once they get to that point, then we will get engaged with them. Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the attorney's report. And our city attorney, do you have anything for this evening?
Just to bring you up to date on Riverside Estates. And since our last meeting, I've been working on the closing of the sale of the Riverside Park to the city. And as you know, probably maybe from your own experience in buying a home or something, closings of real estate transactions can be a little involved. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've got to put funds into escrow. I reviewed the title report to see all the encumbrances that existed on the property in the before the sale state and then in the after the sale state, and made sure that all the encumbrances that we were concerned about have been cleared, and a title insurance policy issued guaranteeing that there were no encumbrances that were objectionable to the city. So I reviewed all that, got it squared away with the title company. They committed to issue a title policy that was acceptable. We prepared deeds, put them into escrow, put funds into escrow. Everybody signed the appropriate documents, deeds, affidavits, and the transaction closed last Monday. And Mayor, I'd like to present to you the original deed to the city of La Center for the Riverside Park.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Great job, Bronson. That has been quite the ordeal to get through all that work and all the issues that were involved with that park. It's been a long, arduous journey for sure, but we got through it with your guidance and help. And again, I think it's going to be an awesome amenity for the city. And again, I hope a lot of people can join us on Saturday. But this is very well done. Thank you.
And then just to wrap up on the phase 2 portion of the subdivision, the only thing that we're waiting on to finalize that plat is a maintenance bond from the developer. So
okay,
very close.
And then those lots will be available again. The remaining lots will be available to go back on the market.
Right.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for the city attorney this evening? Okay, thank you. Next are council comments. Councilmember Fox.
Good evening. Happy to be here. Happy to see so many new faces. I did see people leave already, so that's kind of a bummer, but understand. Just not a whole lot to say, but next week school does start on Wednesday. So just reminding the community to be very patient with, drive slow in the morning and a lot of buses on the road, and just being really mindful and patient in our small little town, watching out. Also, I got an email from Randy Mueller, CEO of Port of Ridgefield. So he reached out, and I actually went to college with him. So we're all college buds, and he would love to connect to just talk about the future of working together and what they can do to help us with fiber optics. He mentioned you guys went to lunch, and so that was really cool. So I'm going to connect with him and see where that goes. So he's a great guy. We get along well. So that'll be fun. Nothing like coming back around later in life. Very fun. So anyway, very cool. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Casper.
Good evening. I would like to echo what Councilmember Fox said about school starting and a bunch of kids, some with new backpacks that'll be hiking around, going to and from the bus stop. So please be careful of that. As far as, I appreciate the folks coming in tonight who spoke of the traffic concerns. Several months ago, when we were approving the paving project that looks like it's just now finishing up, I had a concern with the speed limit. I know it was reduced during the time of construction, but it looks like it's back up to 50 again. They have the sign that said 35 covered up at the end of the bridge. There's a bag over it. So I was curious if that, Brian had planned on doing a traffic study up there. So is the plan to keep that 35 from Timmon Road to the bridge?
So we did do the traffic study. The first part of that was doing a traffic count and traffic speed study, and the guidance in the federal transportation guidelines is you look at the 85th percentile speed, and that's where you want to kind of generally, broadly speaking, unless there's safety or other concerns, set your speed limit. I want to say that the 85th percentile speed was like 42 or 43 miles an hour, so a little bit higher than that 35. So the city engineer and I are working on justification, citing that there's some turning movements there down at the waterfront to justify making that 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, or give us the ability and council the ability to set that if that's the direction that council wants to go. I drove that road today and I didn't notice that one. I noticed the one coming down the hill still said 35, so our intent was to leave it just as 35 sort of in this interim period, and while everything's wrapping up, they still have to do some striping as well out there. So we'll see if we can get that one unbagged. I'm not sure why they bagged that one in particular up and not the other one. So.
Okay, thank you. And then the other traffic concern I had is with that the new Stevens Farm development. I know that the posted speed limit through there is 25, but again, I just wanted to reiterate, I have some concerns about folks coming around that corner heading southbound. There's a lot of people that come in pretty hot through there, and there's a driveway to a 100-house neighborhood. I think that's going to create some issues. So if we're still looking into that, I think that's great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyle.
Hello, everyone. I don't have a whole lot. More questions for Brian. So I just had noticed, and it was brought to my attention by another community member, just with the new paving. I talked to you about this a little bit already, and I was just wondering if you had any update. Where the original kind of road had deteriorated, it still seemed to have a little bit of a flub there, and we talked to see if that was like within the tolerances or.
Yeah, so Tony, the city engineer, went out and measured that. We have a big long straight edge and measured that compared to the WashDOT specs, and it does meet spec. They did do some reconstruction. There was some area, like a localized area of settling in that vicinity that the contractor dug out and recompacted road base and then repaved. So we don't expect any additional settling there. The dip I think that you're talking about is sort of like the whole profile of the road in both lanes. It seems to kind of dip there a little bit. And that's something that I think dates back to the original county construction of the road. And they just, had a little holiday there or something for whatever reason. Tony had actually previously looked at what it might cost to, to replace that section and build it up. And it was a fairly substantial cost, like close to $100,000 in work. And so because it's more of a comfort, and ride issue than a safety issue, we elected to just sort of work around that for now. But, as we continue, if that's something that we could potentially consider in the future as we continue to work out there. But, at the time it was looked at, staff's opinion was that the cost wasn't worth, the smoothness factor. It's not a huge bump where you're scraping really. So
no, for sure. And it does seem way better. It's actually really nice driving out of town now, but I just noticed it and somebody else had mentioned it to me. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention, and
we can all blame the county.
I just didn't want it to exacerbate the, future deterioration of that part of the road again.
Yeah. With the reconstruction work that happened, it should, stay
Maintain
as it is, and not get any worse, at least.
Cool. The only other thing I had was I just noticed in the newsletter it said that we were going to be shutting down the splash pad on September 5th. And I was just wondering if there would be any objection to extending that, just since we kind of had a later summer.
I think generally we try and set that up to roughly coincide with the beginning and end of school. From what I understand, historically there was some issues with kids like soaking themselves on the way to and from school in it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That long, I didn't realize that. I'm just kidding.
So, okay, that makes sense. I appreciate it, but it is a nice feature that all the kids get to enjoy.
If we end up with some hot evenings or something, there's potential that we could go, turn it on on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'm guessing we won't be pulling down for winter, we'll actually pull down the big pipes and everything to keep them safe and in good shape, but I don't think that'll happen immediately. I think mostly it's just turning the timer off. So
cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's all I got.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Cerveny.
I too would like to welcome everybody and thank you for coming. It's always great to have the interaction with the community members. I'd also like to extend my appreciation to Brian and to Tony on the paving project. I leave town about 6 a.m. and come home about 6:30, and I saw on a couple of occasions at least, both of you there. And, that shows the community very solid dedication and commitment to what you guys do each day. And they were very hot days too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I did skip over one item on my mayor's report that I'd like to bring back around for the council. So I would like to schedule a retreat for either Saturday, September 21st or Saturday, August 1st. And I want to mention those two. Did I say October 1st? I'm sorry.
So the 21st or October 1st?
September 24th. These are both Saturdays, or October 1st, which would be the first Saturday in October. So if you could.
Just right off the bat, I wouldn't be able to do the first.
Okay. How about the September 24th?
Not quite sure, but I just know I have a prior commitment on the first.
Okay. Councilmember Casper, do either one of those dates work for you?
Does that basically make it, we have to pick the 24th if he can't do the first? I mean, I just don't know how that works.
Well, I'm just asking you if you're, I mean, we're doing a poll here. It's again, this is the first time since I've been mayor that we haven't had a city council retreat, and there's a lot of things that need to be discussed. We really need to talk about the legislative agenda going forward, and there's other topics that.
I can make the 24th work.
Okay.
But I'm not speaking for everybody else.
Just asking each individual if they could please give me their availability.
Yeah, right now I'm available both days, but we haven't got the fall baseball game schedule yet. So
okay.
That wouldn't take all day though.
Okay. Well, the retreats generally begin at 9 o'clock in the morning and they go until they're finished. So, yeah. Okay.
That's my only concern is the, other than that, I'm available those 2 days.
Okay. Councilmember Fox.
I mean, it would basically, I mean, I can make them both work. I just have to miss kids' games, so I'm in his boat, so.
Okay.
Yep, I got one in football, one in soccer.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I mean, I always pick work, so I'll make either one of them work, so.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Good.
Grandma can take them.
If you're available. Okay, so I will ask Maria to please, she'll send out an invite, and if we can get confirmation on that, we'll get something scheduled. But yeah, there's a lot of topics that we need to discuss.
Yeah, sure.
Would that be something potentially we could start after the noon hour? Just usually baseball, football, sports.
Well, we could start it later.
Mine, it won't matter. I mean, some of mine, it's a crapshoot,
never mind.
really. I mean,
Okay.
We'll just make it work.
I think, there's really no time I could say. Sometimes it's going to, 8 a.m.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Sometimes 2, sometimes 5.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda are staff reports. The first staff report we have this evening is the police staff report, and Chief Richardson will be presenting.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. I just want to just follow up on the traffic complaints over there where the construction is off Aspen. After the last council meeting, I did have Sergeant Olson put our radar trailer up there north of that intersection down there on North Fork, trying to get people coming down the hill. But we'll move that, and then we'll make sure that we get our day watch officers out there to do some traffic enforcement. So we'll make sure that we follow up on that and get back to you. But we are aware of it, and we'll see what we can do. As far as our July 2022 crime report, in July 2022, we had 15 incidents reported, which is one less than we had in 2021. 2021, we had 16 incidents. We had 5 assaults last month in July. We had 1 aggravated assault that involved 2 individuals at one of our card rooms that got into a fight, and one of the suspects started to choke the victim, which made it an aggravated assault. We had 2 other assaults. One was another assault at one of the card rooms, and then one was a domestic violence related assault where the person was arrested. And then we had 2 verbal assaults, which are, one I believe is just a verbal where they made threats of intimidation, and the other one is a subset of one of those assaults. We had 6 property related crimes last month. We had 3 vandalisms. We had 1 burglary. We had 1 fraud where somebody passed a counterfeit $20 bill at one of our convenience stores. And we had 1 theft of a catalytic converter off a vehicle, and we had no auto thefts last month. We're having a pretty good record this year. Obviously on auto thefts, we've made it, knock on wood, through almost August with no auto thefts since about December 3rd of last year. So I'm hoping they all went into the county in other jurisdictions to steal cars. Arrest, we had two arrests, 1 for simple assault, 1 for a violation of protection order. That's 1 arrest less than July of 2021. And as far as call response, we had a slight increase in community-initiated calls for service. We had 108 community-initiated calls for service in July of 2022 versus 103 in 2021. And we had a decrease in police-initiated calls for service. We had 47 in 2022 versus 64 in 2021. As far as other information that council would need to know, we did get a auto theft prevention grant. This is from the state. Believe it or not, the state of Washington has an auto theft prevention authority that's funded by public tax dollars. And we got a grant for about $3,392. And this grant allowed us to purchase 204 steering wheel locks. One of the brand names is the Club, but there's other ones that are out there. So if I refer to a club, I'm talking about a steering wheel lock. We handed out 58 at National Night Out, and I have plenty more to hand out. Currently, we're giving away 2 to every resident that lives in the city. If you have an older model car, especially if you have a car that's between 1997 and 2001, those model years are the #1 cars that are stolen in the state of Washington, primarily because they don't have any of the auto theft systems that newer cars have with the electronic keys and auto theft, kill switches, those kinds of things. So if you just call the police department or send me an email, I'll be more than happy to meet you anywhere and give out 2 clubs. We've also purchased some new crime prevention material that covered identity theft, online safety for children, and auto theft, and some other things. And we gave those to La Center United, and they're including that information in their welcome baskets, just so people are aware of, especially online crimes, those kinds of things, where internet safety and also identity theft. So we're currently moving forward with that. I believe we gave out, we ordered a couple hundred of each, and we gave 100 of each to La Center United. And so if you're not aware, the other thing that's going on in our community, and maybe you saw it in the state, is training, especially training when it comes to law enforcement. Currently, there's basically 2.5 police academies in the state of Washington. WSP has their own academy in Shelton, and everybody else other than WSP, they train in Burien, or they have a satellite campus out in Spokane. And they've come to realize that either commuting into Burien or living in a live-in academy eliminates a lot of people from going into police work, especially if you're a single parent or you're a family that has childcare issues. You can't really go away for 4 or 5 months and leave your spouse alone to get trained. So they've come up with an idea and funding to fund 4 regional academies throughout the state of Washington. One of the sites that they've mentioned they're interested in is a site somewhere in Southwest Washington to take care of the counties and the cities in the southwest portion of Washington. The state of Washington is 51st out of 50 states in the District of Columbia for a number of police officers per capita. And currently in just Clark County, when you just count police officer positions or deputy positions or handling call response, we have about 60 openings just in Clark County, just by ourselves. WSP, they have 110 trooper openings statewide, and that's not counting any dispatchers. Cressa is short dispatchers. There's dozens and dozens of openings for administrative staff in these police departments, records, and those kinds of things. And we're not even talking about correctional deputies. So there is a big push to have these correctional and patrol academies locally. So currently we have a subcommittee with our law enforcement council, which is all the chiefs, the sheriff, the district attorney, and some other players, to meet with state and local representatives to actually fund and locate a site within, we preferably would be North Clark County, or we may even go into Cowlitz County, because we need a piece of land that's bigger than what you would probably get down in the Vancouver area. Land is just not that, there's not a lot that's big enough. So that's kind of where we're headed right now. And so we may be coming back to council for a resolution of support, and so will my partner, police chiefs and other communities, coming back with a resolution of support to put a training center somewhere in this region, to turn it into a commuter facility, but also to provide in-service training for all these agencies, so we can kind of consolidate everything in one place. And I think it would be a win for North Clark County, because again, small businesses, restaurants, hotels, we would have a steady flow of people that would come in here for all kinds of training. So that's kind of where we are. So if you hear anything more about that, that's kind of where we're headed for in the world. And as far as the police contract, I know everybody's concerns. July 20th, I had a phone call with the Woodland mayor just on a kind of a follow-up. July 15th, I responded to some questions and provided some information to Chief Brooks, who was asking questions on behalf of the city manager. And it's just important to remember that Ridgefield, it took us about a year to get to where we got a resolution from our council, and hopefully Ridgefield will move a lot quicker than that. But I think that's where Ridgefield is in their plans. They need to have their staff educate their council, have workshops to invite the council and the public, the community input. And then if Ridgefield decides to use a consultant, because they don't want to use me or Chief Brooks, they want a neutral party to come in and say, hey, we need to look at this and analyze it. That's when you'll get community input and council input from both communities. So then the consultant could come back and say, hey, these are the pros and cons of contracting out, and this is what we need to look at. And obviously, it has to benefit both cities. It has to be cost effective for both cities, and it has to be able to, be accomplished. Ridgefield, they only have one opening right now, and they're currently got somebody in the process. They have a good benefit and salary package. They have take-home police cars. They're an attractive agency to go work for. So that's a benefit for us when you start about recruitment. So that's kind of where we are on that. Again, I know I hear it every day, and I watch calls and I talk to everybody in the community, and I know that public safety is the number one concern for our community. But I think the future of law enforcement is regionalization, just like training. That's where the world's going to go to. Nobody can afford to do anything on their own anymore, and especially for small cities like La Center, where there's so many state mandates, where you now have to almost have supervision 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even a small city like La Center, we'd have to have a sergeant and officer on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that would be a very expensive proposition for a small city. So again, that's why we're looking at regionalization. And I think we've got some movement from Ridgefield. I was in here, not in here, but on video a year ago, telling everybody it's a slow process. Government moves very slow, and we need to get everybody moving forward, and that's what we're trying to do. And that's really all the comments I have, unless somebody has a question for me.
How do you make government move faster? That's what I'd like to know. I always just hear the same drum that people always say, government moves slow, government moves slow.
Well,
I mean,
you know,
how do we make it go faster?
I always tell people this, that remember, government is not a dictatorship, so we have to have compromise, and compromise means that everybody has to have a give and take, so you never get the product that you want, either side. And so that's the laborious discussion that we have over and over and over in these public meetings, and that's just the way government works. So I think that once they get their council on board, and if it's a positive decision, that I think things will move much more quickly. And quite honestly, my personal opinion, I don't think we need another consultant. We have enough data and enough experience between their police chief and myself and other police chiefs we can turn to in this county to get a fair analysis of what it would cost staffing wise and budget wise. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, yeah, thank you for that, chief. And you're right. We'll just see what the next steps are going to be. But, and it is frustrating that it's such a slow process, but what I've tried to articulate here this evening is it is moving forward, albeit very slow. Okay, thanks, chief. So the next staff report this evening will be from Maria for the administrative services. And then we also have our senior accountant this evening giving a presentation on the first and second quarter results for the city's budget.
Good evening, Mayor Thornton and City Council. Tonight I bring you the August staff report. The July sales tax disbursement was $56,527, which is compared to $85,000 in 2021. The city has received their final payment for our coronavirus local recovery funds totaling $475,574. And the city has until 2024 to use those funds. And at this point, that money will be used for lost revenues. And the gambling tax continues to be strong, surpassing $200,000 this month. And I know we had some thank yous at the last meeting, but I do want to thank everyone who helped to make National Night Out a success. The businesses who gave donations of product or time were Corwin Beverage, La Center United, La Center Library, Carl Ashmore and Pacific Northwest Mobile Bars, La Center Church, Clark Hallett's Fire and Rescue, La Center City Staff, Frito-Lay, and the La Center Cornhole Tournament. So thanks for everybody who helped to make that a success. And does anybody have any questions before we go on to our second quarter financials? And
Okay.
Riley.
Thank you for that, Maria. So again, our senior accountant will be going over the first and second quarter results with the council this evening. So take it away, Riley.
All right, spreadsheet time. Thanks for coming out, everybody. If you haven't seen any of these reports before, I've done a few of them, but it's been a little while. Kind of how this goes is we'll look at what we had budgeted, what actually happened in the year so far, and kind of what our expectations are for the rest of the year. And then we have that far column is showing kind of the differences between what the budget was and what our expectation was. For the most part, since this is of June 30th, we will just double what was in Q1 or Q2. If we're not doing that, I'll have a little note at the bottom saying how those expectations have been adjusted. So the first number of pages are all going to be the general fund, and then those will be tied together at the end. Those are split up by department when we get to the expenses, and then we'll do the rest of the funds after that. So starting out with our general fund revenue, the taxes have been pretty strong through Q1 and Q2. Pretty much everything across the board has beaten our expectations. Property taxes, you'll see those are a little bit under. That's pretty typical. We usually set our budget as just a little bit over the levy amount in case anybody wants to pay any back taxes. They usually don't. But our retail sales and our gambling taxes have definitely both exceeded what we were expecting to get. So that is looking pretty strong. Down in our other revenues, a lot of the two big ones that really stand out are these licenses and permits and the charges for services. Both these categories are really driven by construction. Not 100% construction related, but the majority of them. So, we get our predictions pretty early in the year, and those predictions will have to go out to, 6 months to a year and a half out. So they don't necessarily always come true. There has been a few big projects that aren't expected to be done by the rest of the year. So we worked with community development and got some pretty conservative estimates for what we think is going to happen the rest of the year. So the big ones are the building permits. I think those were budgeted at 225, and our actual expectation is looking a little bit more like 54. and the plan check fees, which were at 144, and now we're expecting to get a little closer to 26. As Maria mentioned, we got our ARPA money, or the American Rescue Plan Act, that came in early July, and that's going to be the last of those funds that we see. Let's see what else we have here. Fines and forfeitures, those are a little low. That is the, what's going on at the court. They have, not as many people are getting pulled over and arrested, so I guess that's good news for you that your money's not coming to us, but it's a pretty small category anyway. So overall, the really strong taxes have kind of negated some of that lack of construction, so we're still looking to be about 300,000 over of what our original estimate was. The transfer in at the bottom, that is the payment of the interfund loan from the sewer fund, and that came in early July. Any questions on the revenue side? All right, and we're going to take it to the finance department to start. So we often get questions about these services, so I broke these out a little further so it's not all in one line, kind of gets a little better look there. The salaries and benefits, you're going to see this same note in pretty much any department that has salaries and benefits. We kind of made a new projection based on what our actual staffing levels are as of this time. Also takes into account the slight variation in how many pay periods there are in the first half and second half of the year. But overall, we are pretty close to our salaries and benefits, what we had budgeted. Let's see here. So one of the things that is pretty low and really changed our expectation for Q2 is the services for accounting and audit. We have our semi-annual audit that's going to be later on this year. We don't have the exact date yet, but that is going to cover our 2020 and 2021 financial statements. Other than that, there's a few ups, few downs, but overall our spending is looking to be pretty close to what we had predicted here. Any questions? Anything you'd like me to expand on? What was that? All right. I guess you stop me if you have a question. On to the legislative department. Again, salaries and benefits, we have a few adjustments there. The services, let's see here. That's one of the big things. It's also in pretty much all of these funds is the AWC insurance premium. That's a really big one that happens at the beginning of the year, and so that kind of affects how the expenses are smoothed out throughout the year. Culture and recreation, you'll see that what we have on our annualization is pretty much exactly our budget. That's one of those where we try to get the most out of our budget at providing stuff back to our community members. So we really tried to get pretty much as close to that as we can. And most of our events typically happen during the summer. There's also some stuff around Christmas time, but that often happens a little bit earlier. Moving on to the municipal court department. This is a pretty boring page to look at. Pretty much 80% of this just is the municipal court cost that we pay to the city of Battleground, and that's about 79% of our actual expenditures as well. There's a few other small things in there, such as indigent defense, translation services, and the like, but pretty close to what our budget was on that one. On to our police department. As you guys were all aware, when we made our budget last year, we had made this budget based on a fully staffed police department. A lot of that was so when we are talking to these other police departments and seeing how we can get a good contract going, we could see what it would actually cost to run this department. As I'm sure you're all aware, we didn't hire all those officers on January 1. So our salaries and benefits are definitely under what we had predicted. So some of that goes into these services. Some of those sections were higher than we had expected. However, some things in services, capital, and elsewhere are all based on hiring costs. And so, if we're not hiring anybody, we're not having to buy them new uniforms. We're not having to send them to, officer training, things like that. So overall, we are definitely quite a bit under what we had budgeted here. That transfers out at the bottom. That is a transfer to our vehicle and equipment fund. We had in the budget for 2 police cars. So we still have that budgeted, and kind of depending on where we go with our negotiations with an outside entity, we still have that available if we need to have those cars for the startup. In the planning and community development, as I had mentioned on the revenue side, a lot of this, or not a lot of it, but there's definitely a sizable portion is related to construction. And since construction is not exactly what we had expected so far in the year, some of our planning services we haven't had to utilize nearly as much. So we are expecting to be quite a bit under budget in this category as well. Take a sip here. Into our public works, starting at the top with the public works operations. Kind of one of the things where we're spending kind of the same money we expected. It's just where it shows up in the budget. We had a temp budgeted in the services and the parks operations, and so far they're actually ending up in the salaries in the public works operations. So you'll see some red in one column and some green in another column. Those cancel themselves out a little bit. And other than that, the only thing that's a little low is road maintenance, and from what I understand, that is often done more in the fall rather than the summer when everybody's out of school and such. And then here we have every page that we have just looked at all kind of summarized. So the original budget was looking at a $800,000 deficit. A lot of that was driven by the fully staffed police department. And we are definitely looking at closer to a $1.8 million surplus. So some of the high tax revenue is definitely helping us out there. And, you know, reduced expenditures isn't always good because we would like to have more police, but it still ends up looking green on our sheet. Moving on to our reserve fund. This is, it's good we don't have to spend this because we still have plenty of money in our general fund. We're definitely a little bit low on our interest and dividends. We had been looking at kind of reinvesting some of our bonds that had matured towards the end of last year, towards the beginning of this year. And just the way the market was and the restrictions on what the city can actually invest in, it didn't really seem to be worth investing at that time. That being said, just a couple weeks ago, we reinvested about $10.1 million into some bonds that got us a lot healthier returns. And it was pretty great timing. So we're going to be looking at quite a bit better interest and dividends next year with those. And we still have a few more things that we are probably going to invest in and some more short-term options. But we've got a good investment strategy going forward, I think. On to the impact fees. This is another one where some of these big projects that are kind of delayed until next year or are still in the works have kind of hit what our expectations were going to be on the revenue side. Between the traffic and the park impact fees, we're down about $1 million about what our expectations were going to be. You know, in theory, these will still be constructed, just not necessarily this year. And then I also try to break out some of the actual capital projects a bit better between this fund and the next one. So some of these will kind of line up between each other. So, you know, the grant for the La Center Road paving, we haven't gotten that money yet. And as of June 30th, we hadn't spent that money yet. But as you guys all know, that paving has been done. And as far as I know, there was no material changes to what our expenditures were. And I think we're still looking at getting that grant in. So no changes there. The Pacific Highway Safe Routes Path, I think that one is delayed until next year. And then we just got the consultant one. Just got it. All right. And then the Shared Routes Path, I think that one is expected to start this year. And how that one goes is we spend the money and then we ask for reimbursement. So it's not going to happen one-to-one. So I think we were looking at getting about half of the expenditures done and about 25% of the revenues back this year. So that project will be continuing on into next year. So one of the kind of smaller ones, the Pollux Road storm repair, I think that one is delayed for now. And then the phase 4 park purchase, I think that's what we're talking about, the ribbon cutting on Saturday. So that one is done. And then the school impact fees, that's also construction related, but that's more or less not our money. When we get an impact fee for the school, we just give it right back to the school. So even though that one is down, it doesn't affect us quite so much. So on to our capital projects. This is primarily funded by either grants for specific projects and then the real estate excise tax as well. And just as all the other taxes that we had seen, our taxes are beating our expectations a bit. So the grant that for the community center and the renovations there, so that kind of corresponds to the expenditures down at the bottom. That project is put off for now. We're not expecting to get that done this year. With the 4th Street widening, though, we are expecting that one to get done. So even, whenever you design for it, not the entire thing. So whenever you see these ones where the annualization is exactly the number of the annual budget, that's more or less, we are expected to continue with that, and we haven't heard anything that says this is going to cost a lot more, a lot less, or we are not going to get that money. And then so on to these capital projects, some we are expecting to get done, some are not. I'm not going to go through every single one, but we got all the notes in there for you. So the vehicle and equipment fund, this is just transfers in from the general fund typically. And so we have purchased the vehicle for Public Works that came in a little under budget. And I mentioned the police vehicles as well. So we have not made that transfer yet. Essentially, we don't know 100% if we are going to buy those vehicles, and we're not going to transfer the money until we do think we are, because we don't want to have any additional restrictions on our spending that we don't necessarily need. Into the sewer operations, our sewer fees, we are a little bit over our annual expectations there so far halfway through the year. Our biosolids processing are a little bit lower. We are no longer processing biosolids for Kalama, so now it's just the tribe. I think we're expecting to increase that income a little bit once the hotel is done. We don't have great numbers on what that's going to be, so we're just going with what the monthly average has been for now. Our salaries and benefits, you'll see that's a bit up, and in a few pages you'll see the stormwater is that's a bit down. That's just a function of how the individual employees kind of track their time. From what I understand, there's definitely a bit more work done on the stormwater, but I don't want to make too much of an assumption on how that would actually pan out. But overall, they kind of net out to each other a little bit. And you'll see that transfer out of $1 million, 400 of that went into the general fund to pay off an interfund loan. We pretty much do 400,000 a year, and then the other 600,000 that went to the capital projects fund. The sewer capital projects fund specifically, which is the one we're on next. So there's that transfer in. That transfer was made in early July. And other than that, the only real income on that side is the interest and dividends. So for the expenditures, there was the big one is that sewer membrane project. I think we've got all the expenditures done for the most part. That last 30,000 came in after June, but I think that we've got that part at least done and paid for, and I think we're going to be a little bit under budget there. I think the general sewer plant update, that is something that we are going to get done next year rather than this year. The actual actuator on La Center Road, we're still looking at getting that done this year. And then the La Center School District pump station came in a little bit under budget. The sewer fund debt service, the income on this one is the sewer development charges. This is another construction-based one. And I said it a few times and I'll say it again, where construction didn't quite get to our estimates. So definitely you'll see a pretty drastic change in our annualized income versus what our budget was. The good news is, though, the only thing that we really spend out of this fund is paying off a Public Works Trust Fund loan. And so we made that payment already. And so the remaining balance on that loan is about $1.5 million, and we're scheduled to pay that off in 2028. And then finally, our stormwater utility fund. We're a little bit under on our revenues, but we're still looking pretty good. Salaries and benefits, I mentioned. I think this is just a matter of allocating time, but the net between sewer and stormwater, we're about where we want to be in the salaries and benefits. There's a few capital projects in here that haven't had any expenditures yet, but from what I hear, we're still planning on getting these done this year. And that's what we got.
Any questions for Riley this evening, Council?
fun stuff, isn't it?
So Riley, I just want to compliment you on your work. Your report is excellent. You know, historically, the city has it's been very challenging with our financial reports and getting through this process, but the work that you have done and you continue to do for the city is really, really great. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the footnotes that you're putting in and all the notes that you're including with your quarterly reports, because it makes it so much easier to read and understand. And it's extremely well done. I appreciate your work very much, and Maria, you as well. Job well done, both of you.
Thanks, Brian, for giving me the community development numbers as well.
Well, okay. So if there are no questions for Riley, we'll go ahead and move on. We do have an ordinance in public hearing this evening, and it's ordinance 2022-06. It's the SEPA implementation code update. And Mr. Ethan Spool, our contract city planner, will be presenting to the council this evening. Ethan?
Good evening, council. As the mayor said, I'll be talking with you tonight about the SEPA implementation code update. Don't worry if you don't know what SEPA is. We're going to try and help explain it for you tonight. Go ahead with the next slide. So SEPA stands for the State Environmental Policy Act. So that's a state law that requires environmental review of development projects, but also of other types of projects, including updates to the city's code or comprehensive plan as an example. And it's not only the city that has to administer the SEPA process, it's also other agencies such as Clark Public Utilities or Clark Kellett's Fire and Rescue. Any other public agency, including the state, if they undertake projects, they also have to undergo the SEPA process. So basically what it is it's an environmental review process that happens concurrently with development projects. And so it's not something that adds to the time of those development projects because it happens concurrently with other development review that happens. What's that? Okay. It's the point of SEPA is not to double regulate or layer an additional type of regulation on top of the city's existing codes and regulations. Really what it is it's kind of the glue that fills the holes in the regulations. And so if the city's code doesn't address a specific issue, then SEPA can be used to require an applicant to describe what the particular impacts are of a unique proposal, for instance, and then require them to mitigate for that. And we'll walk you through some examples of that, some general examples of how SEPA is used, but also some specific examples in the center. One way that SEPA is used, just going back to the prior slide there, sorry, on the bottom. One way that SEPA is used, an example, is that the city requires applicants to comply with the air quality requirements of the Southwest Clean Air Agency because the city doesn't have its own air quality regulations. So that would be one example. On to the next slide, please. And then another example would be geotechnical reports, sometimes also traffic reports. Those are professional reports that are prepared by geologists or traffic engineers, and sometimes the city's code does not have the authority in it to address all of the different recommendations that a geologist or a traffic engineer might recommend. And so those recommendations and those mitigations can go into the SEPA determinations that the city issues. All right, next slide, please. So here's a couple of specific examples for you, hopefully to make this just a little bit more real for you. So this was a recent project, the Northwest 9th Avenue Sewer project that was primarily just an engineering utility construction project where they were placing a public sewer line across Pacific Highway running from south to north near Kay's subdivision. And that sewer line is going to cross a private residential lot within Kay's subdivision. So the city used that SEPA process in a couple of different ways because, again, there weren't specific provisions in the city's code to address this situation. And so the city required the applicant to construct the sewer protecting the existing home being constructed adjacent to the sewer on the private property. And then secondly, the applicant was required to protect the existing natural gas pipeline, telephone, water line, and existing force main during the construction of the sewer line. And then, so speaking of Kay's subdivision, there's another example there for you. Everyone probably knows generally where that's at. That's a new subdivision that's under construction, again, off Pacific Highway, a 37 lot subdivision. That was originally approved several years ago, but they came back in for what's called post-decision review, which is kind of an after-the-fact land use process. And they wanted to change where their wetland mitigation was happening. Originally, they were going to propose that the wetland, originally they did propose and were approved for wetland mitigation on site. They came back for a post-decision review to buy credits from a wetland mitigation bank, the East Fork Lewis River mitigation bank. So they moved that mitigation off-site. And during the SEPA process, Ecology wrote a letter to the city, which is pretty common. They do this and they kind of have a standard list of issues that they write in these letters. And so the city used the SEPA process to condition the applicant to follow the requirements of that ecology letter, and that required things like placement of clean fill, obtaining a stormwater construction permit prior to construction. Those are a couple examples of what ecology requires in those type of letters. And again, those aren't necessarily requirements that are in the city's codes. The SEPA process was kind of the glue that put that together. All right. So I wanted to switch gears just a little bit here and talk to you about the specific code amendments that are in front of you tonight. The first one is in LCMC 18310.080. And so the city SEPA implementation code is in that chapter, all of it, 18.310. And again, all jurisdictions across Washington administer this process, and they have fairly similar codes and fairly similar processes. So the change that we're proposing to this particular code section is to reference in the state's optional DNS process. DNS is determination of non-significance. And that's a streamlining process. And so the standard SEPA process requires a 14-day public notice, notice of application when an application is received, and then another 14 days once the determination is issued. So, you've got basically 28 or 30 days there. The optional DNS process combines that first and second comment period. So it saves applicants, roughly 2 weeks, and it also saves the city processing time. So that's just a reference that we're recommending that be included in that code section. The next change, next code section that we're proposing to change is 18.310.090. And this deals with the thresholds for SEPA review. Not all projects are subject to SEPA review. There's some projects, minor construction, maintenance and repair, some utility projects that aren't subject to to SEPA. And there's a whole list of SEPA exemptions in the WACS, the Washington Administrative Code. And so the city's code essentially references those threshold levels into its code. But the state law also allows the city some flexibility to increase those thresholds, and that's what we mean by flexible thresholds. So in other words, if the city raises the threshold, there's a larger development, more development that can happen without having to go through the SEPA process. And a lot of jurisdictions have raised their SEPA thresholds, and that was something that I think first became available in about 2012. So we're proposing that the city raise one of its SEPA thresholds specifically for grading. Right now, that trigger is 300 cubic yards. This would allow for 1,000 cubic yards of grading to happen without specifically going through the SEPA process. But this would just be grading only. It doesn't have anything to do with the rest of for instance, a subdivision project that might otherwise trigger SEPA, like numbers of housing units. Go ahead. So in 18.3.10.232 are what are called local categorical exemptions, and these are exemptions that the city has adopted on its own that don't comply with the state requirements. And so I previously mentioned that the city references the exemptions into its code from state law. But for some reason, one of the things that the City of La Center's code does is it adds some additional exemptions that don't occur in the state's in the state law. And so we don't think that that complies with the state's requirements. The city doesn't have the authority to establish its own exemptions that are not included in state law. So in particular, there's one exemption in there that specifies that pre-application meetings, which are those pre-development meetings that we conduct with applicants, don't have to undergo SEPA. That one's just kind of a useless exemption. We never require SEPA of people to come in and talk with us. So I'm not sure why that ended up in there, but it doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose. And then the second one in there is sort of broad, and it says that the mayor or his designee can exempt type 1 or type 2 development projects. So those are projects that are reviewed administratively by the city, those type 1 and type 2 projects. So those would be things like site plan review projects, such as, for instance, the Heritage Center commercial complex that underwent type 2 site plan review at one point in time. So this particular exemption would allow the mayor to exempt those type of projects from having to undergo SEPA review. But the city cannot arbitrarily exempt those type of projects. It's more about the amount of development and the type of development that's occurring and whether that hits certain thresholds or not, in terms of whether the city can exempt that or not. So we can't just say all type 1 or type 2 or pick certain type 1 or type 2 projects. So staff is recommending that section be repealed. And then close to the last section that we're recommending making some amendments to is 18.3.10.235. And that section deals with the connection between SEPA, the SEPA review process, and the critical areas review process. Critical areas, if you don't remember what those are things like wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, critical aquifer recharge areas. And so if you look at this code section as it's written today, it lists a bunch of different types of critical areas in there, and it doesn't use standard terminology for those. Those those categories that I've mentioned have sort of become standardized over time across the state, as well as in the rest of the city's SEPA code. So the first change that we're making is just standardizing the language in there to match up with the rest of the city's code. And then the second change that we're making in this section, again, is along the lines of streamlining, making it easier for people to not need to go through the SEPA process. So we're revising the list of exemptions in that section that apply within critical areas. So what this section says is that certain exemptions that I mentioned earlier that are contained in state law don't apply in critical areas. So if you're developing in a wetland, for instance, then this section says, okay, you're otherwise exempt, but now you actually do have to go through SEPA review because you're in a critical area. We think that that is double regulating, unnecessarily regulating, because critical areas regulations are fairly extensive and they cover a lot of different types of impacts in critical areas to protect those areas. So there's really, in a lot of instances, there's really no reason to require SEPA review within critical areas. So that's what the changes that we're proposing in this section are doing. Just to give you a couple of examples, the city's existing code says that if you're purchasing property, you have to go through the SEPA process if the property purchase is in a critical area. That just doesn't make that much sense to us. So those are the type of things that we're trying to clean up. Another example would be a short plat, which is a subdivision of 4 lots or fewer. Again, if that's happening in a critical area for some reason, critical areas regulations would apply. They would go through that process, and the mitigations would come out of the critical areas review. So there's no real reason to require a short plat to go through SEPA review, in our opinion.
Ethan, would these changes just basically put us back into compliance with the WAC? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's kind of the essence of it, plus streamlining some.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it would be of my intention, but is there any risk to not comply?
Yes.
Okay. I figured as much, but I just thought I'd ask.
All right, last one is just kind of some code that's more or less defunct in 18.3.10.280, and that's references the county's old wellhead protection ordinance. And so the county doesn't even have that ordinance in place anymore. So this code section really doesn't need to be in there. It's intended to protect wellheads, but those are protected, again, by critical areas. And they're called critical aquifer recharge areas in that context. So we don't think this section is needed. So our recommendation then is for you to conduct the public hearing and approve the proposed revisions to LCMC 18.3.10, updating the SEPA's implementation process. And with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Before I open up the public hearing, are there any questions for Ethan or discussion amongst the council members?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Okay, so at 8:18, I will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to address the council, please step up to the podium and give us your name and address. And if you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Not seeing anybody step up to the podium. Clerk, do we have any callers or anybody that would like to comment over the phone? Any written comments? Okay, so at 8:19, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back over to the council for any questions they may have or other discussion.
Very thorough, Ethan. Thank you. Mayor, I move to adopt Ordinance 2022-06, amending the SEPA Implementation Code in Section 18-310 of the La Center Municipal Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2022-06. This is an ordinance, so if I could please get a roll call vote, clerk.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Casberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Strobin,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
The ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ethan. It's kind of tough stuff to get through, but you did a great job, so I
Thanks for
appreciate
paying
it.
attention.
Yep. We have one other item of business this evening, and it'll be a presentation by the Public Works Director, Brian Cast, and it's regarding a bucket truck that's going to be coming up for auction. So, Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before we leave the last item, I just wanted to point out that in the quirks of government, we actually had to do a SEPA to amend our SEPA code. So, interesting.
Public process, you gotta love it.
But in any case, that's not what we're talking about now. So the city's 2022 budget included contemplation of purchasing a replacement bucket truck. Currently, the city has a 1987 truck, and I believe the boom lift on the bucket truck dates back to the 70s. It's well past its service life. It's not super safe, and we'd like to replace it with something that is. And so yesterday, actually, we came across this auction on Gov Deals. This is a truck that was formerly owned by the city of Salem and it's being sold. Today, we sent one of our public works mechanics down to take a look at it. He found the truck satisfactory and said that it looked like it would work to meet our needs. And in order to be able to bid, we need council authorization. RCW 3930-045 allows us to suspend the typical bidding process for auctions in particular, like this one. So this truck here is a 2007 Ford F450. It has a Terex lift. Has 92,000 miles on it, and again, it looks like it'll meet our needs. And so we're looking to have council authorize that the city staff be able to bid up to $22,000 on this truck. Again, we have $30,000 budgeted, but we wanted to leave a little bit of money in reserve for one auction fees that will come due. There's a 10% buyer's premium in addition to the bid price, and also to have some funds available if we want to do any preventative maintenance on the vehicle once we have it in our possession.
No, you have to pay taxes on it too, right? Or no? Is it because it's a city vehicle, or maybe not?
I don't think that we have to pay sales tax, do we?
Yeah, we do.
No,
Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's a big chunk too.
Yeah, so that will be a chunk too. So in any case, happy to answer any questions before staff or before the council considers a motion.
Is this a gas engine or diesel?
It's a diesel.
Okay, with 92,000 miles?
Yes.
A lot of life left on it.
Do you know if the boom's been serviced and tested on that?
I don't know when it was last tested, no.
Okay. It might be something to look into before we make a bid, but I think it looks like a good truck. Terex makes a good product. I kind of know a little bit about them. But.
Any other questions for Brian?
No.
So are you looking for a
Just
head
a
nod, a
motion.
resolution, a motion?
Just a motion.
A motion authorizing the public
Okay.
works director to bid up to $22,000 to purchase this vehicle.
Mayor, I make a motion authorizing the staff to bid up to $22,000 on the bucket truck.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize staff to proceed with the bidding of a new bucket truck and authorizes the bid amount up to $22,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, Brian.
Do I get to drive that next year? No.
So the final item on the agenda this evening is for adjournment. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Got a little wordy there.
Exciting topic.